So algorithmically, I'm shooting myself in the foot here, making a third video. And it's even worse. I'm shooting myself in both feet because this is not a bionicle video. It's about plants. It's about fruit specifically. And the reason I wanted to make this video was kind of twofold. Two things happened today. So for one, we live on a little lot of land that we do not own. We do own this trailer that we live in, but we do pay rent for the land that we are on. And we have a handful of trees here, which unfortunately have been marked to be cut down. I think one of the trees they're going to save, but the other ones, they're just being very overzealous and cutting down a bunch of trees. And okay, whatever. I'd like to plan on planting something in their place as not only a plant lover myself, but also my mom, who has loved plants pretty much her whole life. I want to get something that, well, inspires both of us. But here's the thing. When you go online to look for plants, and that's not exactly what this video is about, but it's something that spurred the thought of this video, there's a lot of people that are just going to scam you. So I have a question to ask you, and this is leading into the second reason why I made this video. This one might be obvious. Which of these is fake? Just real quick. It's kind of a trick question because two of these are fake, and it's the last two. I think that's pretty obvious here. You can see that these blue strawberries, and in this case, these are supposed to be black strawberries, though I upped the saturation a little bit, and of course, OBS upped the saturation as well because of my settings here, but suffice to say, white strawberries do exist. However, a little bit of false marketing here. Oftentimes, if you are aware of these, you may have even seen them in stores. They're typically marketed as pine berries. Don't be fooled. They don't really taste like pineapple. They're not related to pineapple, and pineapple has a very particular flavor to it. There are things that are reminiscent of pineapple, sure, and you could definitely say, well, these are a little bit sour, and pineapples can be sour, but they are different in much the same way that if you go and eat a jalapeno pepper or put a sprinkle of black pepper on your food, the spice is there. It's hot in both cases, but they do taste different. That's because they're spicy for different reasons. Well, the same is true here. Pineapples are tart for a very specific reason that's kind of unique to pineapples, whereas strawberries are tart because of something called malic acid. There are some other compounds in there as well, but malic acid is something you're probably very familiar with if you've ever had a green apple or maybe slightly underripe raspberry. In fact, raspberries, strawberries, apples, peaches, almonds even, they're all related. Fun fact, they're all roses. That's not the point of the video, it's just a fun fact. Roses are a very significant crop food across the world, and there are way more plants than just that, including roses themselves. I implore you to go look. If you've ever seen the plants, if you've ever seen the flowers specifically, it's very easy to tell that they are related, but suffice to say, getting back into this topic, fake plants annoy me. As someone who likes plants, not to say fake plants in and of themselves, I have a few, and I have a sister who's allergic to pollen, so like I'm familiar with fake plants. No, people selling fake plants and pretending they're real, that annoys me. Scams always annoy me. Here's the thing, too. This is not the first time I've seen blue strawberries. This is not the first time I've seen fake strawberries. And in fact, this is not the only way that people try to fake this stuff. Something else that I have seen that irks me quite a bit is when people try to market hybrids. And when I say hybrids, I don't mean, oh, you took this rose and put them together. No. I'm talking about hybrid fruit that don't exist. Strawberries that have been sliced into, and you look up an image on Google and it's a kiwi on the inside, or a banana has been sliced into and suddenly it's a handful of tomatoes. Like, that's not how plants work. And it's funny too, because what got me into plants was working in the produce section of a store, where working for my manager, who had been doing this far longer than I did, would go into the break room and talk for minutes on end. Loved the sound of her voice, sure, but for minutes on end about these wonderful new products that we were getting. And this is one that really bothers me. Not the product itself, it's perfectly fine to have a novelty product, but this is something that we got in our store called a grapple or grapple, however you pronounce it, but there is a long A there. That's what gets me, because I heard my manager going on and on about how delicious these were and that they were a hybrid of apples and grapes. And that is not what these are. These are a novelty product. They are really apples, and there are a handful of different varieties that often this company can get for relatively cheap. Apples are fairly cheap products in general, but that have been soaked or in some other way modified with grape flavoring, usually artificial, because it's fairly easy to fake a artificial grape flavor, although I will mention that just because Kool-Aid smells fake, Concord grapes really do smell like Kool-Aid. They're an incredible little fruit. They're very different fruit, too. I implore you to look into it. But that said, this is a product that exists, but it is not a hybrid. This is something that's been modified. And here's the thing. Here's how I know. I did not ever go out and buy these, but I have had them before because where I worked would often implore us to try the new items that would come in. It's how I tried lemon plums, which are delicious, by the way. But I tried these as well. They smelled like Kool-Aid, so I had high hopes. They just tasted like a bland apple. And I am somebody who likes apples quite a lot. I will stand up for Red Delicious, which many people call bland, but I do like them. These are just not great. Here's the thing that gets me too. This is not the first time that I've seen stuff like this. It's actually a pretty common tourist trap as well. There are many other countries that do very similar things like this, where they will market products as one thing, submerge it in the liquid of another, sometimes artificially flavored, sometimes naturally flavored, and basically make a concoction of juice where they will throw, you could think of it as like pickling fruit, but in juice of other fruit rather than a salted brine. Nothing wrong with that inherently, but it is a novelty, and if you don't know any better, you might pay too much money for it, which is often the case with these products. So, yeah, the companies make a bunch of money, and that's fine. Again, I have my issues with this kind of stuff, but that's not the point of the channel. I'm more upset by the blatant lies. Here's the thing. That company isn't trying to tell you that this is really a hybrid of a grape and an apple. I'd be pretty ticked off if it was, but Amazon will, or maybe not Amazon themselves, Amazon sellers will, and I think that these companies have a responsibility to fix that kind of stuff. So it was to no surprise to me that I often, when searching plants, do so with a skeptic eye, because as I was mentioning today, we're looking for trees to replace the trees that are going to be cut down, and I want something that's beautiful. Not for me so much to say, but for my mom. My mom has a specific interest in Japanese maples, for example. I love redbud trees because they are a native here. Of course, I'll get her something that she wants, and at the end of the day, we're gonna stay cheap because we can't afford a bunch of money, obviously, but $30 to spend on a tree, cool. I'll take it. It feeds us some oxygen. It's good for the ecosystem, and if I can convince her to get something native, that's even better, but suffice to say, something to keep her happy with her limited mobility when she can get outside. Something that maybe flowers pretty cool, but, for the rest of the year has some beautiful colored leaves or something just to make her happy, No, what gets me is as I'm looking up this information, because I'm familiar with a lot of different kinds of trees that are popular for landscaping, and we don't want something that's crazy tall like a tulip tree, which are gorgeous, by the way, but can get quite large and unwieldy. Rather, looking up this information, I was finding a lot of these trees were just fake, blatantly fake, with blue leaves or white leaves. And here's the thing, variegated is a thing. In fact, albino plants are a thing. I have found albino oak trees, crazy as that seems. They are a real thing. Blue trees, however, it depends, but alarm bells should start to go off. And that's kind of what was happening here. When I looked at this picture that was very clearly just desaturated and the contrast was up, it looked like a pretty picture. Lovely thing to put on the background of my computer, but a terrible, terrible product because it's not real. And there's very little recourse for you other than maybe claiming in 6 months from now when the tree starts to grow that, hey, this isn't the color it was supposed to be. And by then it's probably too late, which is why many of these products stay up for as long as they do. Blue strawberries included. Well, you got to wait 6 months until it gives you these strawberries, and then maybe another 2 or 3 months till the strawberries are ripened and grow to their true color, in which case they're going to be red. And red strawberries are delicious. Don't get me wrong. I've had some that taste like cantaloupe, which are amazing. I have no luck growing strawberries by seeds, by the way, but I do have some strawberries. With all that being said, no, it is worth being skeptical of this kind of stuff. So I have one more question for you. One more that I want to see if you can pick out which of these is fake. Which of these three? Well, you'll be happy to know that none of these are fake. Just because something seems off, seems unusual. These are all different varieties of raspberry. And in fact, quite common here in Missouri. Wild. It's the thing that got me interested in plants was raspberries. Learning that these things that I smelled when they came in on our produce trucks, which smelled divine, by the way, grew right in my backyard. And in fact, do. Well, a third of a mile away, but close enough. Interestingly for me, I have found black raspberries pretty much everywhere, and they're delicious. They don't taste like raspberries per se, at least not what you would expect a raspberry to taste like. They're a whole different beast, but they are delicious. And I've found white raspberries as well, which taste fairly similar. Have not yet found red raspberries, which is odd because they're the ones you see in all the stores, right? You would think even maybe escaped raspberries I'd find, but not yet. And at some point I will. I'll probably even get some. No, what I wanted to teach you in this video, the other thing to take away from this, other than look out for scams, is also know that there are things outside of your expectations. Here in the US, first of all, the US is not, at least for the longest time, has not been a significant cultural player in the fruit world. You know, many fruits were developed where a lot of mankind was, and so I feel like I'm phrasing this incorrectly. A lot of the plants that we're used to originate from like Asia and stuff like that because of the cultural significance there, where here we have a lot of native fruits and native plants, but many of them were kind of wiped out. America's done some pretty terrible things, and also just different lifestyles for a long time. Though there are a lot of important, say, apple varieties, for example, that have been developed in the US, there are not a lot of native fruits that we have propped up for a very long time. And it's sad because there are some incredible native fruits here in the US. In fact, my favorite family of fruits comes from here, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But it is worth knowing that just because you go to a store and you see something that says raspberries or red grapes, it doesn't mean that there's just one kind. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of species of raspberries, more than 30 in the state that I live in alone, native here. Grapes, a very similar situation as well. No, when you go to the store, it's worth paying attention to the variety, because if you think, oh, I don't like red grapes, you maybe have just tried a kind that you didn't care for that much. I've had plenty that I don't like, but there are a handful of varieties that I love. Allison red grapes, for example, are delicious and probably my favorite. My mom likes holiday red grapes. They're sickly sweet to me, but they are flavorful. You see things like Concord grapes. You see things like cotton candy grapes, which although have been developed, or actually developed not so much to taste like cotton candy, but to taste sort of like Concord grapes, because fun fact, Concord grapes are one of the original flavors, if you will, that lended that cotton candy flavor, if that makes sense. Because again, Concord grapes are just packed full of flavor. I'm probably getting some of this information wrong, and I apologize, but suffice to say, it is worth looking at something different and paying attention to the variety. Just like when you go to the store and oh, I like Fuji apples, but I don't like Macintosh. I like Pink Lady apples, which are delicious, or Opal apples, which are delicious, or Red Delicious apples, which many people think are overrated, but I like them. I think they taste just fine. No, the same is true for everything. There's not one species of banana, but there might be one at your store. However, you go to maybe an international store, and not only do you see really cool foods from other cultures, you'll also go and find like burro bananas, which are delicious, or you'll find Thai bananas, which are delicious, or red bananas, which are a thing and are delicious if you know when they're ripe. It's a learning game for sure, but it is fun. And it's something I implore people to do. The last thing I want to mention before I end this video, as I mentioned, there are a lot of native plants here in the US, native edible plants, in fact. And it is definitely something you want to make sure that you kind of know what you're doing. If not by reference from other people, learn, consume information, and just know that a lot of people are going to tell you things that are incorrect. I'm not the type of person to look at plants from like medicinal reasons, because that's can be dangerous, and I don't always trust what people say, because I've heard a lot of people try to scam people, as we've started this video with. But there are a handful of plants that grow here that are beautiful. One example of that being the pawpaw tree, a very well, growing in popularity native plant. It's like a tropical plant, but it grows right here in the US and even into parts of Canada, and has been culturally significant to Native Americans and even, early settlers for a very, very long time, and yet kind of went by the wayside for a handful of different reasons, and maybe I'll cover that in a separate video. I actually have theories about pawpaws and its taxonomy, but that's for another day. One of the other plants, though, that is maybe a little less culturally significant, at least in the US, but still not one to overlook, and in fact, one that I grow not only outside, is native here to where I live, to Missouri, and to the eastern United States in general, and is delicious and beautiful. The last one that I want to show you in this video is this one right here. This is called Passiflora incarnata. You might also know it as maypop. This is an unripe fruit, and I know that not because the fruit is green, as many of these fruits stay green even when they are ripe, but because of the thickness of that rind, because it should not be that thick when it is picked. And for what it's worth, those seeds are white as well. Perfectly edible as is. It's going to taste like a rubber shoe, but sure, whatever. The seeds are useful in this case here because they taste kind of like lemon, but the plant itself is incredible. Those flowers are big, by the way. They're not small. They're about that big around. Sometimes a little smaller, sometimes a little bigger. Every plant is different. My plant has sort of various colors in the flowers, very similar to this one here with the white and green sort of alternating petals. They're very beautiful flowers, by the way, and fun to watch too. Very good attractors of pollinators, bees, etc. Carpenter bees especially love them as well, bumblebees, etc. And in this case, the fruit will usually stay green, although on some varieties they may turn a white or even a slight yellowish color. No, for these you really go by smell, because when these are unripe, they're not really going to have a smell from the outside. If you cut them open, they, like I said, might smell like a rubber shoe. When they are ripe, though, they're going to give off so much scent, and you can smell them from like far away, and it's delicious. Here's the thing too, although what I'm going to show you is a dry fruit, this right here is in fact a maypop. Now, my plant is on the smaller side in general and produces smaller fruit, but is still a prolific plant nonetheless. My plant also, lucky me, has some kind of genetic variation where it self-pollinates. Typically, these do not self-pollinate, at least that's what I've heard. I can't confirm that, but mine does, so hey, I'm not going to complain. When the plant is fully ripe, the fruit are delicious. I'll get into that in a separate video. I've talked about it in the past, but suffice to say, all the importance from this video is that A, learn about what's around you. It's a lot of fun. You don't have to like feel like you need to dive in and learn everything all at once, because that's intimidating. But also just be weary of scams. If something looks untrue, probably is. Note that when you go to the store, you don't see that many blue fruit. There are reasons for that. Blueberries technically aren't even blue, though there is a bit of a powder coating that gives them that effect, and some raspberries have that powder coating too. Fun fact. In fact, a lot of fruit do. Again, separate video. With all that being said, though, if you guys did enjoy this video and learning hopefully something a little bit new here, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe. It does really help out the channel, and it tells YouTube you want to see more content like this. Along with that, you can join in on the conversation down in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. I really like to implore, native plants specifically, but sometimes it's fun to grow things from outside your area. Just make sure to do your research. You're not introducing anything invasive. And of course, you can join the conversation more on this on my Discord, or of course the Bionicle chat, which is always there. But we do have a channel on Discord called Fruitbird, and you can talk about fruit and plants in that one as well. You can also check out the Instagram or Patreon if you want to support the channel and what it is I do here, plus get some perks, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.